Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Day 2, IBC 2014. My name is Ken LaRue. In the next half hour, we're going to take a deep look at Smoke 2015 Extension 1. And if you gain anything out of my presentation, what I really hope you see is that a program like Smoke, where your editing and effects are in one program, makes you more efficient, and it's a very powerful workflow. Now, I know that you're probably using products like Avid Media Composer or Final Cut Pro. These are very good editors, very capable editors. But when you need that extra level, when you need to go into heavy color correction, compositing, special effects, that's where you typically leave your editor and go into another application. In this demonstration, you're going to see how all of it can be done in one application, which is Smoke. Now, I mentioned Extension 1. We added more tools in the timeline for you, continuing what we've always been doing is adding tools where you stay 90% of your time in your timeline. We've added sparks for plugins like GenArt Sapphires, Lut Editors, and the Matchbox tool, which is a very deceiving tool, which we're going to take a deep look at, because it's actually a tool that you can custom make your own tools, but it also ships with many of them. Also, the desktop subscription, which we introduced with 2015, is allowing Smoke to be accessible to even more people than ever before. And with the flexible monthly, quarterly, or annual plans, you can choose how you want to use and pay for the product. The last thing I want to say before we get into the demo is about a book that's available to you called Smoke Essentials, written by Alexis Van Herkman. It's an excellent learning resource, and if you're really nice to me and you applaud at the end, I might actually let you have one or two of them. But the point I'm bringing this up is Alexis created a short film called The Place Where You Live, and he used that media for the book. That's also the media I will be using during my presentation. So let's go take a look at Smoke. So I'm going to minimize my slides. And as I said, if you're a typical editor, you're going to recognize the UI is very similar to what you probably have seen before, where we have our source, our sequence view, our media libraries, and our timeline down in the bottom. So I already got some media brought in here, so if I go into a folder, I can simply start selecting my media. And just for reference, if you are familiar with Final Cut Pro 7, the editorial hotkeys inside of Smoke are based on those editorial hotkeys from Final Cut 7. So once again, we're trying to help you transition into Smoke if you're just starting with it. But a good point is the JKL playback. I can use my JKL, I can set up my ins and outs with my I and my O, and so on. And then I can come out, and I can either use icon buttons for insert, override, or maybe I'll just use the F9 key, which is the hotkey, to insert that into my timeline. So now that clip is added into the sequence. Great. I move on to my next clip. We continue to build our creative edit by finding our in and outs. This time I'll just drag it from my media library. I can just drop it down into sequence. And also you can also just take your clip directly from your viewer and drag that down. What I'm showing you is nothing groundbreaking. This is what you've been doing probably for years in other applications. But the point is, I'm trying to emphasize what you already know is exactly the same inside of Smoke. So you'll be able to step in, start doing your editorial work, and easily start taking advantage of Smoke, which is what I'm talking about, the powerful tools. But before we go further into that, let's just discuss a little bit more about the editing tools. So you've got your ripple, your link, your trim, your slide, your slip, all your typical type things. If I come in here and I want to start doing some editorial work, I can start to edit my ins, my outs, and so on. I really like our trim view. I think it's a very flexible trim view. I double-click on an edit point. We step into the trim view. So now I can really finesse this edit to make sure it's telling the story that I want it to tell. I can even start the playback, and I can use different hotkeys to really edit this down and fine-tune it. Once I'm happy with it, I click down to stop the playback, and I can come right into the trim view with ripple on or off and start to really get that edit to where I need it to be. So as I said, this is probably what you've been doing for years. I really just wanted to emphasize it's right here inside of Smoke also. Now, we do respect and understand that there is a time or a place where people really love those editors I mentioned, such as Final Cut 7, Final Cut 10, or Avid Media Composer. That's fine. You can still do your creative edit in those applications and then easily drag and drop that timeline from those other applications into Smoke to take advantage of the powerful tools we're about to look at. So let me just quickly demonstrate that. I'll close this sequence, and I've got a folder, a library, named Conform, and it's empty. There's nothing in it right now. I'll go to my Conform tab, and I can right-click, and I can choose Load XML or AAF file, depending upon if you're using Avid Media Composer or Final Cut. So here's an XML that came from Final Cut 10. I'm going to select it. I just choose Import. Smoke now rebuilds that timeline automatically, imports all the footage that was edited inside the other application, and builds it for me here in Smoke. So now if I go back to my timeline, I start to scrub through. You can see all of that came over from Final Cut Pro 10 in this case. But not just your creative edit. What's really great is your transitions, your dissolves, and a lot of the tools that you use, such as in this clip, there was a scale and a transformation performed in Final Cut 10. It's converted over to Smoke's tools. It converts it to a 2D transform. So it's taking what you did in the other application and brings it into Smoke very easily just by drag and drop. All right, let's start talking about the workflow of adding tools into your timeline. So I've got this clip here, and I want to start doing some color correction. Pretty straightforward. I'm also going to go to a one-view layout because I want to focus just on what I'm working on. I don't need to see my source view yet. So with the clip selected, I go to my effects ribbon right here, and I can add a color correction. Well, you can see there's lots of tools available, but I'm just going to focus on the color warper right now. I get the parameters that I can start to adjust right in our timeline, such as my white. I can brighten this up, do some saturation work, maybe start adjusting the gamma, the gain, and so on. But if I want to access everything that's available to me in this tool, I can click this button that reads Editor. Now we step into the tool, and you can see everything that you have available to you. I've got my colored trackballs. I can really create the grade or the color effect that I want for this individual shot. Once I'm happy with what I've done, I choose Exit. I go right back out to my timeline. Now, I mentioned the Matchbox tool as one of the newer tools that's available directly in the timeline, and I want to focus on that just a little. I'm going to go to my Effects button, and I'll choose the Matchbox button to add it to this clip. Immediately what you see is a list of all the shaders that are available to me directly in Smoke by default. This is a list of I don't even know how many tools are, but you can see how many there are. This is what this tool is. It is a shader language that you can custom make your own tools. These come with Smoke out of the box. What's also great is the community out there is building these, and they have them on websites. You can download hundreds of tools. So when I say we added the Matchbox tool into the timeline, don't think of it as one tool. Think of it as hundreds of tools, and you can customize them any way you want. There's different tools for motion graphics and blending and effects, but if I select one that's named dots, you see now I have this very motion graphic effect applied to this. I can come in here and adjust the size of this, or if we want to go into the editor, I can even get more controls of this, and all of this obviously is keyframeable if I needed to, and so on. But if I want to change my shader, I'm saying, well, that's not what I want. I want this to look more like a fabric effect. I just click the Change Shader button. I come in here and I select the fabric, and now you can see as I start to adjust this, we now get a fabric effect to the clip. So the point is the Matchbox tool is a very versatile and powerful tool, and now it's directly in your timeline. Okay, moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about what's called Connectfx, because if you've never used a node-based compositor, it could be a little alien to you. But just think of this as a connect the dots tools inside of a flow graph. So for example, with this clip selected, I've got my color correction applied to it. I want to go into Connectfx, where I access an extremely large selection of tools. I choose Effects, and I come over here and I choose Create Connectfx. And we step into the node-based compositor. Understand, I am still in my timeline. This node right here, that is going back out to my timeline. This node is my original footage, and there's the color correction that I applied. Now look on the bottom. Here's all these other tools now that I can access inside of Connectfx. Maybe I want to add a stylized effect. I want to create a cartoon type effect. So I add the stylized effect, and you can see we've got a list of all these different presets. Let me turn on an option there. So here's all the presets that come with this tool. I want to apply the color comic book effect. So I just apply that, and now you can see in the screen I now have this comic book effect. I could customize it, I could change it, I could create my own, but what I'll do is composite the end result of the color correction on top of the stylized to get the end result that I want. So I go back to my tools, I go to my comp tool, I drag this in, and very quickly I can make some connections and connect this to my output, like so. And then I double click on the comp tool, and I can change my blend mode. Maybe I want it to be a screen, and I can now dial this in. The point is, each node will affect the one afterwards, and you build the schematic and your flow chart as you want, but you're always going back to your timeline. So if I choose Exit, I go back out to the timeline. Here I am now in my timeline with that effect. Okay, so that's a basic introduction to Connectfx, because now we're going to do a comp that's going to be a little more complicated, but it's really going to show off the power of what Connectfx offers you. So I'm going to close that sequence and open up another one. This is actually from the book and the movie, just so you know. And in the book, this lesson, what I'm doing here is actually a step-by-step lesson, so you'll learn it when you read the book. Let me show you what the end result's going to look like, though. So in the film that Alexis made for the book, it's about multiple worlds that these people can transform between. And what they use is a portal gate to step through. And I'll play this back for you. So as you can see, what happens is the wall opens up, and the woman in the other world can now transform into this world. And it's a long story, but watch the film. It's actually very good. But we want to now go through step by step how that was done. So you can see what I have here. I have the green screen footage.
First of all, right away, you'll notice that it's kind of washed out. That's because it's a logarithmic file, so it's in log space. My timeline is in linear space. If I navigate down, you can see this footage is all inside of linear space. So this happens sometimes. You get different log and linear footage. Well, as I mentioned earlier, then in the new extension here, we've added the Lut Editor directly in the timeline. So I can very easily apply a Lut Editor and choose one of my presets to log, I want to go log to lin. There we go. So now I'm working with the right color space in the timeline as I want. Let's start to pull the key. And as you can see, that green screen really is not lit as well as we'd probably like it to be. But I'm going to show you how easy or powerful the keying tools are inside of Smoke. So I'm going to add what's called the action tool in the timeline. So the action tool, this is a 3D compositing tool. It's a full 3D engine, full 3D space. I'm not going to use the 3D on this part, but I just want to show you some of the power that the action tool offers you. I'll step into the editor for the action tool. You'll see it's got its own schematic where you can access the different nodes, the lights and the cameras and so on. But as I said, it's a 3D space, and your image that was a flat image is now actually extended by cubic. I can bend and manipulate and subdivide this and further control it. That's not what we're doing. I just wanted to show that part off. What I want to do is go into the keyer. So here at the keying level, I'll just double-click where it writes K for keying, and we step into the keyer. And what Smoke has given me is a preset or a layout of different tools it's suggesting I use to perform the key. If I come to this view, we want to take a look at the incoming footage. So it's giving me the master keyer, it's giving me a 2D histogram, a matte edge, a garbage mask, but also look down below. I've got a whole other set of tools that I can still access if needed. In this case, I'm just going to go and take the master keyer, which is the first tool, and I'm going to click right around this area where her hair is at, because I really want to make sure I maintain the softness of that hair to pull a good key. The first thing you're looking at is the actual color-suppressed version of that clip. That's why the green disappears. I hit a hotkey. We're now looking at the matte that's being pulled. And as I zoom back, we can see we got a lot of work to do here, okay? Well, here's what's great. Bring your cursor into the view, click down, and Smoke is going to give you contextual sliders and adjustments that it recommends that you start to make adjustments to fine-tune the key to get what you want. The most concern is this soft area where her hair is at, right? So I'm happy with that. Let's add another part to this called a patch, which will let me to finesse just specific areas. So I switch to what's called a patch, and I start to just click and drag in these different areas, and what Smoke is going to do is try to correct just that area and not affect the other part, which is the softness over here. I can even go to a second patch if I wanted to, and I could go and tell this to be black, and I could go and continue to fine-tune that, even adjust my range, so on, and get it to where I'm very happy with it. Now, obviously, I've got a lot of other issues, but let's be serious, let's be smart about this and use a garbage mask to get rid of the garbage that I don't want to focus on. So I'll go over to my garbage mask tool, make sure I still take a look at the incoming footage, and I want to just change a quick preference, and I want to draw a mask for each side of the room. I'll zoom back to give myself some room. I'll click Add, and we'll just come along here and draw it along the door, come up by our hand, go along the desk. If I was doing a production here, I would obviously be a lot more careful. But if we look at the matte right now, you can see what we've done. So I've made sure I've got the opaque area that I want. And I can adjust this just to make sure that looks a little better. Maybe even put a little offset on that. And then I can go and add another mask for this other part. So I click and drag here, come up by here. I'm going to go right down by her hand. And again, go right along the desk just like I did before. But this mask, I want it to be the opposite. So now that's going to be totally transparent. So the only area I have to worry about now is that little space in there, which is going to give us a little trouble, because if we look at the end result, and I zoom in, you can see that it's working, but it doesn't look as clean as we want it to be. One of the main issues that you see is on her hand, you get that black edge along the edge because of the lighting wasn't as proper as we wanted it to be. A typical workflow is someone goes to their matte edge tool, they turn on the erode option. That helps a little bit. But then they go to turn on the shrink, and then we kill the softness. We don't want to go that far, right? So I'm not going to use the shrink. I'm going to use another tool that's available to you called a pixel spread tool. So I take this in here. I'm just going to connect what I got to connect here to my matte input, and then I'll take the output, connect it to that. Now, I'll set this to be the output of the pixel spread tool, because I really want you to see what's happening. What this is a warping tool that's going to warp the edge. Looking at her hand, you can see what I'm doing. I'm expanding. I'm warping the pixels past the matte. It finds the matte area, and if I toggle contraction and expansion, you can see what it's doing. So what's the benefit of this with the key? I'll show you. I like to do it in context. Let's take a look at the end result. There's this corrupt area we want to get rid of. I just take it and I'm warping, I'm pushing the pixels past where the matte was. So now we've cleaned that up. It looks very nice. We've got the softness of the hair. I'm happy with this. I choose return. We go back out to the timeline. Now I want to take all of this into Connectfx, where we looked at a minute ago. So remember what I have here. I've got 3 different layers. I've got the clean backplate. I've got the woman in the background that's got to come through the wall. And, of course, I've got my keyed footage on top. I'll select all of them, and I'll go over to my effects, and I'll choose Connectfx. So Smoke now builds a connection of all those nodes that were in the timeline now inside of Connectfx. I can hide my media browser for right now. In fact, what it did is exactly what I asked. It gave me the action tool. It's got these comp tools and so on. But I want to do everything in action. So I'm going to get rid of a couple of these tools and rebuild it the way I like to work. It's just a preference. Either way works. It all depends on how you like to work. I like to do a lot of my compositing in the 3D compositing world, action. So I'll go to the action tool, and now I just want to change my stacking order. Wait, I connected the wrong thing. Bear with me. I want this onto there. That makes more sense. And then I'm going to take this layer, drag it back, and drag it there. Okay. So now I've got my layer stack where I wanted to do. Obviously, that wall does not color match the wall that's in the scene. It's a simple color correction, right? So I go over to my wall. I double-click where it reads color correction. We step in. I got a 2-view layout. I'm looking at both of them. I'll go to the first frame. And I'm going to go to my color warper, and I'll just region select this wall that I want to change, and then I'll region select the wall I want to get the information from. And it automatically color corrects it. Now, it's got me by 90%. I think I want to do a little more adjustment, but that's the beauty of it. Even if it gets me 90 to 95%, I can come in here and start adjusting my midtones. Maybe I want to take the black and even darken that up a little bit more and really finesse it to where I'm happy. Now, we return back out into Connectfx, and I've got all this, which is great. I need to create a mat that's going to create the opening and the warp effect on the wall. So we're going to do that with some more tools that I have in here. First thing I'm going to get is my paint tool. I'll double-click on my paint tool, and we're going to come in here, and you'll see, just like think of Photoshop, you got all these different brushes, you got all different layers you can do. I'm just going to come in here, and I want to create a white kind of scribble like this, and then I'm going to switch to a gray color also, maybe darken it just a little bit more, and I'll just come in and kind of add some sparks here. You'll see where I'm going with this in just a second. Bear with me. And I'll make the brush a little bit smaller and just go like this. Okay, the point of this is I now want to go to my tools, and I want to get my deform tool. I take the deform tool, and I attach it to the paint tool. Now I have this offset that I can now start to animate to create the warping effect that's going to be part of the wall opening. So I'll keyframe that. I'll go to my last frame. I'll just drag this up to somewhere around 100 or so, whatever. So now I've got this warp effect taking place. I want to soften it a little bit. We want to blur it. So we go to our tools again. I get the blur tool. I drag this in. I add that. So now I go and double-click my blur, and we'll just make an adjustment to this. Now here's where I'm going to create something called Connectfx Clip. And what this allows me to do is pre-render something. So this is going to take 36 seconds, which is pretty impressive, actually. So it's taking the paint tool, the deform tool that's animated, and the blur tool. It groups it into one node, and it pre-renders it. The point of this is as I work on my comp, as I work on my flow chart, I can pre-render parts so that it doesn't take as long in the end. Also, I need 4 instances of this actual end result. I don't want to have to duplicate all 4 of those 3 tools 4 times and process them. Do it once with the Connectfx Clip, and then you can use that as you move forward. Just for a point, someone asked me after one of my demos, yes, I can go and open that up again and access the tools and make adjustments. But if I do that, obviously I have to re-render to get the end result. Okay, it's done. So I can now take these tools and I can actually throw them away. I'll take this now, and I want to start adding some more. I want to build out the wall we're going to use, or the mat, I should say. I'll take a 2D transform. I'm going to take a color correction, another action tool. So, you know, you just keep building the different elements that you need to create what you want. Actually, that's okay. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to connect the main input there, and I'll take my mat and feed it to there. And the point of this is now I come to my 2D transform, I scale this down, pick this in. So this is going to be the width and the size of the opening on the wall. Now I want to go and create another layer and bring in my warp effect that I had there. I'm going to go. Come on. There we go. Take this guy, feed this in here. And if we go into the action tool, as you can see, each one has a node. It's the extra layer I made. So I've got a node I can go and rotate. It's all 3D space. But what we'll do is we'll change the blend mode to be a subtract. And then I can scale this down to fit where I want it to be. And then I'll move it up. Okay? Now here's a great workflow tip. This is the axis tool. It controls the transformation. Whenever you duplicate this and you add new axes, you're creating an instance of this. So I'll connect this axis, and I'm just going to drag this onto the bottom. I'll just take it, bring it down. And then I can go and create another duplicate with a hotkey, and then I'll connect this one over here. And then we'll go back. We want to get rid of the the transformation and rotate this like that. Maybe scale this up a little bit and move this over to the side. And guess what we're going to do? Duplicate that one more time, and we're going to connect it over here and just move it over there. So now as I scrub through, you can see I'm starting to create the warp effect of how we're going to create the door opening. Let's do one more thing with my background, though. I want to blur that just a little bit to soften it. That's better. Okay, I need one more element. I'm going to bring back my media library, which is right over here. And I need to go into my stills folder. And I got another object that I created in Paint, but I did a little more time on it, and I didn't want to waste it during the demo time. So we're going to come in here now and create another part of the warp. I'm going to go to my Matchbox tool. It's the same tool I mentioned on the timeline. Here it is inside of Connectfx. I add it, and I'm going to tell it I want this to be a ripple. Then we'll go to the ripple tool, and this is what I want to animate, the ripple effect. And I can animate this too. Move forward several frames, take it down. So now I've got this kind of warping effect to the actual little paint object. Next thing I need to do, I want to bring that and rotate it. So I bring a 2D transform into my scene, like so. And I'll go and animate that, not rotation like that, go to the last frame, and I'll just rotate it like this. So now I've got this spinning, warping ripple effect. Let's go and move this guy out of the way. I'll take this guy down here. I want to create 3 versions of that. So I go to my tools, I bring the action tool up again, and piece by piece, I'm just going to keep building the elements that I need to create the end result, which we're going to be putting all together in just a matter of minutes. Let me move up a little bit, give myself some room. Take this guy, feed that layer in, one more layer. So now I've got 3 versions of it, and we go into the action tool. There they are. First thing we'll do is change the transfer mode. I want them to be a screen so they all interact with each other as they blend together. That will give the end result that I'm trying to get. And then I can region select all of these axes at one time at the first frame, set it to 0 so there's the transformation of 0. Take each axis one at a time, and I can see the little icon in the viewport, so I can go and reposition this one here, move that guy up there, select this one, and then I'll move him over, up, and down, something like this. And then we're going to move forward a couple frames, and independently, I want to take and scale up like this. So I select this axis, move to another frame, bring its scale up. Oops. Bring its scale up like that. Maybe we'll select this one, move forward even more frames, and I bring that up like this. So the point is, I now have got all 3 of them animating over to certain frames. Taking it even further, because they're individual layers, I can also slip them if I want to offset the actual rotation that's taking place outside of the action tool. All right, time to put it all together. So what do I have? I've got this element, I've got this element. I'm going to go and take my comp tool. I take the comp tool, bring it in. I'll make my connections, take that guy, this guy, and we set this to be a multiply. And as I scrub through, we've got this effect happening, but I want to invert it. So I'm going to add another tool. Just keep bringing the tools in that you need. They're all right here available to you. So I make this a negate. And just for demonstration and making a fast workflow, I'm going to create a Connectfx, and I'm going to render that. So all of that's going to take less than 15 seconds to process, and now it's an individual node that I can repurpose over and over again. Same thing I did with the earlier part of the demo where I had the different the warp effect. Once that's done, this is what we're going to use as the mat to have the wall open to reveal the woman underneath. So I can take all of this, get it out of my way, and I can even throw that away if I wanted to, but I'll feed this now into the actual mat for that, and you can see what's happening. But it's kind of not in the position I want. Simple fix. I go into the action tool. I select that layer I just imported, which is right here, and we'll just shift it over a little bit on the X. So that's where I want it to be. Now I got to select this woman, the one who's in the background, and let's first of all flip her. She's got to be reversed, and I'll position her where I want her to be. So now we're getting the effect that we're looking for, but I want to add that sparkle effect that you saw in the actual end shot. So we're going to go back out to Connectfx. I'll go back to my tools. I'll get my Edge Detect tool, and I'm going to connect that to that same tool. As I scrub now, you can see we're starting to get what we're looking for, but I want to have rays shooting through as it opens up. So I'll go back to my tools again. I'll take that Matchbox tool again that I've used many times, and this time I'll tell it to give me the rays effect. Now I've got these rays effects that are happening all built right inside of it. We want to take that, bring it in as a layer. I bring a new layer. I take this, bring it in. Let's go into the action tool. We got to change the transfer mode. I want to set that to be a screen. And obviously the position's not right, but what's great about these nodes is it's a relationship. I've already transformed or moved this layer over where the wall is opening. So I'll just click off of that and connect it to this other clip. It now becomes the parent and lines it up automatically for me. Lastly, we go to our priority editor, and I drag that down. And if we want to take our transformation, we can dial this down any way we want. The whole point, though, is where have I been? I've been in my timeline. I go back out to the timeline. I render this. I see it in context of my story. And if I don't like something, I go right back into Connectfx. I don't leave my editor and go into 2 other applications to get the end result, to render it out again, to bring it back into my editor. It's all in one location. And that's really the story about Smoke. Editing and effects in one package is really a powerful and efficient workflow that's available to you on the Mac. All right, to wrap this up, as I mentioned in the very beginning, a couple resources for you to learn the program. Obviously, if you're new to it, go to YouTube, search Smoke Learning Channel. We have a gentleman named Grant Kay out of London office who pumps out, makes training videos like crazy, not just for Smoke, but also Flame and so on. But there are so much free training available there. And the material, you download material also. And if you're not familiar with area.autodesk.com, it's the community for media entertainment. It's not just Smoke, it's 3ds Max, Maya, it's all of our products, but there's tons of blogs and tutorials and many that I have actually created, and they're all available for free also. Lastly, I come back to my book that I mentioned. So this is a great learning resource if you want to download the trial of Smoke and you want to go through something, but you first got to get it, right? You've been all very patient. I appreciate you being here with me, so I'm willing to give you a copy of this book for free. You have to go to the counter, scan your badge, and the lovely ladies over there will actually give you a copy of the book if you'd like it. Okay? So if you want the book, please go get your badge scanned. Thank you very much. This is Smoke 2015. Stick around. There's tons more demos coming on. The day is just starting. Thank you.